Mhm. Oh, okay.
We can go ahead and get started, Sister Lubna.
Okay.
I'll just go ahead. Assalamu alaikum, everyone,
Assalamu alaikum.
and welcome to the mental health series of NMCC. Alhamdulillah, we've been trying to create awareness with different mental health topics as well as just topics for emotional well-being. And inshallah, we will start today's very informative session on parenting with top three parenting mistakes and how to deal with them by our therapist, Sister Lubna Ali. She's been in the community for many years and mashallah practicing as a licensed family and marriage therapist. And she has great insight about this topic as well as a lot of other family related topics as mashallah. It's very informative to learn from her and get her opinion on a lot of things and learn from her, mashallah. So we will inshallah begin by the name with the name of Allah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل وسلم على نبينا محمد. And let's go ahead and take over, Sister Lubna. And if I have missed anything, please go ahead and introduce yourself in more details, and then we can get started. Do you have any presentation to share?
Not at the time, not at this time, but I can give you guys notes after, kind of what I did last time. Yeah. So I will just, yeah, I'm just gonna kind of talk, right? And then present, and then yeah, you guys will, I can send it to you, Nudrat, too, so that you can share it with everybody.
Yeah, so that what that will happen is once we have our topic uploaded on the YouTube, there will be a link for the PDF or whatever the notes are,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
whenever you want to refer to it later,
Mhm.
we can go ahead and get those for our future reference, inshallah.
Yeah, yeah, because I definitely want, yeah, you guys to have the notes so that you can just try to take whatever tips you can, to do the best job as, we all can as parents. So I'll get those to you guys, yeah, soon after.
Okay. And maybe we could take notes from today also, so we could
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
benefit already,
For
inshallah.
sure. Yeah, I don't want to always kind of put out notes first or like a presentation, just because I want you guys to be listening and kind of taking it in, and then I'm going to give you the information after. So that's kind of why I had decided that.
Great. Let's get started and let's listen to this wonderful topic.
All right. Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Is my video, is that gonna work or no? No, just making sure.
It should. You can go ahead and turn it on.
Let me see. Okay, if I could do this. Um, okay, yeah, can
Yes.
you see me? Okay,
Yes,
all right.
I can.
This, all right. Okay, so you guys can see me okay now.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's get started. Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Walaikum
Uh,
assalam.
Yes, as you know, Sister Nadarth shared, I'm Lubna Ali, a licensed marriage and family therapist. I've done a few seminars here at the mosque. So today, the topic we're going to do, it is something I'm very passionate about, and I just think, yeah, once I had learned some of this information, I was like, I want everybody to know about this because it is going to make such a difference in our parenting. And, that is the most important, hardest, and the longest job that most of us will have. So, so yeah, so this is about the top three parenting mistakes and just kind of some strategies I want to share of what you can do to correct them. And I don't know if any of you guys have heard of Dr. Becky Kennedy. So a lot of this information is based off of some of her research. She wrote a book, Good Inside. So I'll put that on the notes as well. So if you guys want to go a little bit deeper into the information and have resources, then that's what this information is based on. So yeah, so we're gonna start. Okay, so parenting, like I said, it's the most important, hardest, and longest job that most of us will have. And to be honest, if you think about it, it's the only job that you're going to really care about on your deathbed. Not to be morbid, but it is something that we really do reflect on our lives. And we're going to think a lot about our children, about our parenting, how we're leaving them. And so that's why I just think this is such important information. So it's a job that's very difficult, very impactful. It is ongoing, right? So even when the kids are adults, like still parenting happens, right? At the same time, the ironic part is that this is a job where we don't really get any training for, which is why, I want you guys to know there are a lot of resources out there and we do have to be learning. Um, so it's important to know that you're not a bad parent, even if your kids, you're struggling with them, like that's completely normal. It doesn't make you a bad parent. It's just that we're not adequately prepared. So that's something that I want you guys to kind of accept too. It's not that you're bad or anything, it's that we just don't have the preparation. So, and the number one reason that parents don't get help is because a lot of times we think I should be able to do this on my own. Like this is something that people have been doing for years and years and years. So I should be able to do it on my own, but it's not the case. Like it takes a village, it takes us learning all of that. There's a lot of things out there that we can, that can help prepare us for parenting, for this job that we care the most about. So this is the problem, is like when people, they think, oh, I should be able to do this on my own. Then what happens is then they start having shame underneath, like, oh, am I a bad mom? Am I a bad father? And a lot of times moms actually view themselves as failures when it comes to parenting, because they think women should just know, like, oh, it's a maternal instinct, like we should just know. And then that's what leads to the struggling. So, and then with the struggling, there's two different paths that can happen, is where one is, you'll think, oh, like, what is wrong with me? It's my fault. And then this spirals into a freeze state of mind. Like, I just don't know what to do. I throw my hands up. I'm sure, some of you have experienced that before, especially with teenagers. That's really a struggling time too. And then there's another path to look at, like when you are struggling, to think, wait, what resources and support do I need? So there's different ways that you can look at it. Like, what's wrong with me? I don't know, whatever, I'm going to throw my hands up. Or like, what resources and support do I need? And that's what I want you guys to take away and to have hope, looking at it from that perspective. Like if you are struggling with your children, and we all do at times, nobody's a perfect parent. I for sure am not. So just to hopefully give you some hope, like what can I be doing differently, um, to have a better result? So, okay, so that's just kind of the beginning. And so what I want to focus on is sturdy leadership. That's what we want in parenting, is being a sturdy leader. So what that means is, so the tips that I have, so connect before you correct. So what that means is, like, when you reflect back to a kid, a lot of times kids, they maybe do something that's not right, or they misbehave or something, and we're so quick to correct them, like, oh, don't do that, or why are you doing that, you're being bad, or whatever. Like, we do not want to be doing that. Instead, you want to connect with them before you correct. So what that means is, when you reflect back to a kid that they're a bad kid, like, oh, you're being bad, or why are you doing that, like, what's wrong with you? I mean, a lot of us have said that at times. Sometimes it comes out, that's how we are raised too. So when you reflect back to a kid that they're a bad kid during a stage where they are forming their identity, okay? And this, I mean, is for many years, I mean, even before, yeah, like teenager, but even teenage years, that's going to stick with them. So I really want you guys to take that in. Like, what is the message that you're sending to your kids these days about how they are in the inside? If you're reflecting back to them, like, what's wrong with you? You don't listen to me, like all of these things. This is really going to change their identity, and it's going to be negative. It's going to stick with them if you're reflecting back to them that they're a bad kid. So I want you guys to really, really take that in, because sometimes we don't realize that, or we think we're doing it for their own good, but this is affecting their sense of self, their self-worth, their self-esteem, all of that. Okay. So it's, and I want to give hope too, that just letting you guys know it's never too late to repair these things that we've done. So we sometimes think that trying to understand the behavior of a child means we actually approve of it. Like, let's say if, they maybe they lied about something to you, like, oh no, I didn't do that, and then we're just so quick to like punish them, or sometimes we think, oh, like, oh well, why did you lie? Like when we get curious, we think we're not getting mad at them about it. Instead, we're getting curious, we're trying to understand. Sometimes parents think that we're approving of that, but that's not the case. Instead, what I want you guys to do is to separate the behavior from the inherent goodness of your kid. Okay. Like we want our kids to feel like they are good inside. They are inherently good inside. It's just that their behavior is bad, right? Like it's not that, oh, because they're bad, they're doing something, maybe they lied or something, that they're a bad kid. No, maybe you know what? Maybe they don't feel safe telling the truth with us, because maybe we're quick to punish them. So we have to look at ourselves too. So that's what I want you guys to know, is like, if you can separate the bad behavior from the inherent goodness of your child, that's the goal here. Okay. So to have a better connection with your kid, you want to try to understand your kid's bad behavior. That's the foundation for effectively changing it. So what that means is that, like, let's say if they're doing something, I mean, I have a lot of parents who come to me and say, oh my gosh, she's doing this or that, or, like it's just out of control and all of that. And they're like, what should we do? Like, how should we discipline, or what's the consequences? And yeah, of course, like there can be consequences. At the same time, you don't want to just jump to that. You want to think, wait, what's going on underneath this? Because nobody is just inherently a bad person, especially kids. Like it's just that they don't have the tools yet, and they probably have emotional stuff going on, and it's coming out in their behavior. So that's why we want to really try to understand what's the underlying feelings. Sometimes we just discipline, like, oh, well, I'm taking your phone away, or you're going to your room, you're not seeing your friends. But did you even have a conversation? What was going on with you that you hit this kid at school? Like, do you guys think about that? Like, I want you guys to make sure that you're thinking of what is the underlying feeling? What's going on there, that it's coming out in their behavior, because you know that they know better. Okay, so just by understanding it doesn't mean you're approving of it. Instead, it's going to help you only, it's going to only help you in figuring out the foundation for effectively changing the behavior. Okay, so we have to understand before we intervene. And to understand what's going on underneath, then you could do research, ask questions, seek help. There's courses, workshops, resources. Like there's different ways of understanding the kids' behavior. So a mistake that parents do is we think that it's our job to make our kids happy. That's a mistake. It's not your job to make your kids happy. Instead, it's resilience over happiness. So when we focus on making our kids happy, we actually start to make them fearful and less tolerant of all of the other emotions that will inevitably be a part of their life into adulthood. So I want to say that again. When our goal is to make our kids happy, like we just want to have them stop crying, we want to have them stop, tantruming or whatever, or misbehaving, like, and we just think, oh, well, we have to be doing something for, that. Then we're just, when we focus only on making them happy, we actually start to make them fearful and less tolerant of all of the other emotions that will inevitably be a part of their life into adulthood. Like, we're not going to be doing them any favors by just trying to sugarcoat or trying to distract them from negative feelings. Oh, don't think about it, or don't be sad, don't be worried about it. No, that is doing a disservice to them because, because we're just trying to make them feel happy. Oh, like just, like, oh, don't be sad. Or no, we want them to learn how to actually have their feelings and to know that they can manage them. Like it's going to be okay. So, so resilience over happiness. So like I'll give an example. If you have a young kid and the kid says, I'm the only one in kindergarten who doesn't know how to read. Okay, like of course you feel sad. Oh, like they probably feel left out or, not smart or whatever their feeling is. And so then you come in and you say, oh, but you're so amazing at soccer, or you're so good at math, or, oh, everyone reads at their own pace. It's like you're not giving them the space to feel sad about it. And that's the issue. So what message is it sending them? It's sending them, oh, like, because the parent is just jumping to the positive, not even sitting, acknowledging the negative feeling. That's even though we think we're doing something good, it's actually going to backfire because what message is it sending them? It's sending them, oh, like, no, we don't deal with these feelings, like we just turn them off and we focus on the other things. So it's something that's different. Like, I mean, I remember for me, before I even went to school to be a therapist, I would say like, oh, don't be sad, don't be worried, like to my friends or whoever. Don't worry about it. And I thought, oh, I was doing a good job. I was trying to be, kind and loving, but realizing, learning that that's not good because it turns off. It's saying to them, it's too uncomfortable for me to sit with your negative feelings. So don't be sad. Like, let's just be positive. Right. So that's not good. So instead, and it sends the message too to the kids that they're taking in our actions and figuring out what emotions are safe. So if your kid is coming saying, oh, I'm the only one in kindergarten who doesn't know how to read, and you automatically jump to, oh, well, you're good at math, or you're good at soccer, or, oh, everyone reads at their own pace, like don't worry about it. Then it is telling the kid it's not safe and it's not okay to feel sad about things or to feel insecure. And do you guys think, and I know you're not going to talk back to me, but like, I want you guys to think like, do you think in life there's going to be times where they're going to be feeling sad? They're going to be feeling insecure? And how are you teaching them to cope with those feelings by responding in that way? Like, oh, everyone reads at their own pace. It's not a big deal. You're not. Instead, you're sending them the message, it's not okay to feel this way. Like this is not an emotion that I can tolerate. And the emotions that you have, is the child is going to feel whatever emotions I'm taught that it's too hard to tolerate from my parents. Then as soon as I feel them, I need to turn them off. Okay. I want you guys to think about that. Like, as soon we're sending, I mean, I'm not saying everybody's doing this, but we don't always realize we send them the message what emotions are safe to have and what are not. And when kids turn off, are taught, oh, well, I can't have, oh, I'm having this feeling. Oh, no, I automatically can't have to turn it off. It's uncomfortable or it's not a safe feeling to have. I can't tolerate it. Then what happens is the feelings, they end up coming out in their behavior. It ends up coming out in other ways. So that's why we don't want to try to make our kids happy when they have a negative feeling. Instead, we want to tell them, I like something that you could say, is like, we would say, I am just as scared of this emotion that you are feeling, and I want to run away from it too. So you're not telling them that, you're not, you want to make sure that you're telling them, like, this is possible. This is something that we can tolerate. Instead, if you try to make them happy, you're telling them, I'm just as scared of this emotion that you're feeling, and I want to run away from it too. So then you don't know how to cope with the feeling and to tolerate it. And then you're also teaching them that they don't know how to tolerate it either. So that's why it's not our job to make them happy. We want to make them resilient. Okay. Because kids, they sense our fear. When you make happiness the goal of childhood, you actually set a kid up for anxiety. And I've been seeing this a lot lately. I'm sure that you guys have seen it too. Like there's a lot of anxiety going. I mean, there's always been anxiety, but like it's definitely from, kids that are younger now. Like it is, and a lot of it has to do with not knowing how to sit with all of these feelings. So you end up teaching them that they have a range of emotions that they have encoded as fearful and wrong when we try to make them happy and not have that space to have the negative feelings. So that is something that we as parents, that's definitely one of the mistakes, is trying to run away from those negative feelings instead. And I'm going to, we're going to talk. I know in a lot of our, our culture and community, like we're not taught how to actually sit with negative feelings and how to tolerate them. So we will get there. So definitely happiness is not the goal of childhood. Okay. It's about becoming resilient over happiness. And know that with anxiety, anxiety is not a feeling. It's not. Instead, it's an experience of wanting to run away from a feeling. And you can't run away from a feeling inside of your body. There's no win. Like the feelings don't just evaporate into thin air. They are stored in our bodies, and that's what causes the anxiety. So we want to really teach them. And that's even one of the, like, whenever I meet with a new client, doesn't matter what age you are, I always ask, like, on the first session is, how did you do feelings? How do you do feelings in your family? What's your relationship to your feelings? Are you, and people haven't even thought about that. Like, do I dismiss them? Do I turn negative feelings off? Do I run away from them? Do I try to escape them? Oh, we couldn't talk about feelings in my family if they were negative, maybe anger only, but then that's not even discussed, in a healthy way. So it's really so important to just we don't want to set our kids up for anxiety. And a way to help that is to make sure that they have the space to actually have the negative feeling and try to understand it. If you don't know how to, like I said, like we could always seek help. So, all right. So we want to help our kids be resilient. The key is resilient over happiness. So what is resilience exactly? So resilience comes from the ability to tolerate and sit with a wide array of emotions. All right. So a neurosurgeon was asked, like, what the number one skill, so like analyzing the brain, right? What is the number one skill you can do to be a better human being? Okay. And you know what he said? He said emotional regulation. So, I mean, I wish I could see like hands up, like, who here feels like they are good at regulating their emotions. Okay. And the reason that emotional regulation is so important is because it will help support us in being happier and healthier human beings. If you can learn to regulate your emotions, which means learn to navigate all emotions, doesn't matter. Like there's no unsafe emotions. Of course, it doesn't mean like they always feel good. They're not going to, but you can learn to coexist to manage them, right? So resilience is, or emotional regulation is learning how to navigate all your emotions, to be with them, to feel uncomfortable and sad, and learn how to manage them by not avoiding them, running away, or being distracted. I mean, I will tell you guys, so many adults, because I mean, I see adults, teens and adults, so many adults that come into my practice and they say the same thing. I don't know how to regulate my emotions. So if we as adults don't know how to regulate our emotions, what do you think the kid is learning? They're not. And so then if they don't know how to regulate their emotions, which means having a range of all of your emotions, allowing yourself that space to have them, then they're going to struggle in ways. It's going to come out in their behavior. So what I'm trying to convey here, to really drill inside you guys, is to understand whenever there is bad behavior, it's not that the kid is bad. It's they really are good inside. They just don't have the tools. They just don't know how to cope with these feelings and to regulate their emotions so it ends up coming out in their behavior. So don't be so quick to punish and just discipline. Understand, wait, do I know how to regulate my emotions? How am I handling my own anger, my frustration, my sadness? How am I handling it? And then how am I modeling that? What am I modeling for my kids? Okay. So it's really important for us to, because I mean, parenting, it brings up so much of our own stuff, and it really makes us reflect on, wait, what am I doing here? You know, how can I be a better model for them? And it's hard when we weren't raised like that, you know? So that's why it's important for us to do that work on ourselves, because that's how we're going to be, you know, teaching our kids too. So yeah, okay. So the goal of childhood and adulthood is emotional regulation. And it's not easy because a lot of us were not raised in homes where you could have certain feelings or at least share them, discuss them, process them. You know, and so that's really the goal, is emotional regulation. For us to teach our kids how to regulate their emotions, we have to be able to do that with ourselves. Okay, and that's why, I mean, like I said, there's a lot of resources out there. Um, you know, I even heard this one woman say that, like, once she had kids, the best thing she did for her kids was she went to therapy, because she knew I need to be dealing with my own stuff for me to be a better parent to them, because otherwise all of our stuff comes up. Okay. So the issue with, like, so like I said, this is the goal of childhood and adulthood. The issue is that the problem is that as adults, the stakes are a lot higher, you know, when you can't regulate your emotions. Like people, they, you know, if they can't regulate their emotions, they can lose their jobs, you know, so then your livelihood is at stake. So the stakes are light higher. Or relationships, you know, you can have bad relationships, you can end up getting divorced, or you know, different things, or, you know, just, or it affects the kids too, right? Like, so there's just, the stakes are a lot higher when we struggle to regulate our emotions in adulthood. All right. So in order to be a better parent and to heal your kid, I want to really drill this in. You need to learn how to be a better leader and program yourself, regulate your emotions so that you can manage these situations. Okay, so when we have kids, we have this unconscious wish that they're going to heal us. You know, instead, what ends up happening is they end up triggering us. It's just a fact. Like, whatever frustrates you with your kids, I want you guys to know it actually is a lot. It's showing us a lot about our own stuff that's coming up, that's being triggered. And so we have this unconscious, you know, wish that, oh, well, our kids are going to heal us, you know, but really they end up triggering us. And so how can you utilize these triggers as information about what you need to work on and your own healing? Like, that's going to be a different way of looking at it. Like, if my kid is frustrated, it's easy to put it on the kid, like, oh my gosh, they're a bad kid, or they don't listen or whatever. But have you ever paused and reflected, why, with whatever my kid is bringing up in me, why is it hard for me? Maybe did I not get the patience, you know, from my parents? You know, what is it teaching me about what's this insight? Because it can be really good information on what needs healing within your own self. So, you know, so we look to external things to give us a sense of safety and security. But what we have to do is gaze in and realize that we have the power to heal ourselves. So whatever you're frustrated in, and I also, I mean, you guys know, a lot of you know, I work with couples. So much of the couples work is recognizing what of my own stuff is coming up. What are my own wounds? What is my own issues, my own triggers? It's so easy to put it on your partner. Oh, well, you made me angry about this, or you made me feel insecure. No, I'm telling you, 9 out of 10 times, just like with kids, it's our own stuff. Okay. That's what we have to have, that mindset if we really want to grow, and not expect everybody else to be how they need to be for us to be okay. No, it's showing us a lot about our own selves. Okay. So like I said, resilience over happiness. So how do we raise resilient children? So first you want to understand resilience. And what that means is having the ability to tolerate hard things. Okay, if we can't tolerate hard things, how do you think our kids are going to feel? Like if we're like freaking out over, oh my gosh, like this happened, or, all of that, like what message are you sending them? You're not regulating your emotions, okay? So we have to accept the fact that having kids is not always fun or convenient. All right. When they're having an issue, the way that we respond sends them a message of what they can do. So, like, let's say if they, you know, um, maybe they got into a car accident or something, right? Like if you have a teenager driving and you just freaking out, oh my gosh, you could have died, like, all of this. What do you think it's going to do to them? It's going to just make them freak out. It's going to make them feel like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, of course, like you want them to have some fear about it and of course be cautious. But if we're just putting that all on them, what is that doing to them? It's showing them, oh, like it's not safe to share with mom or dad about things that are hard because they can't handle it. And I see a lot of kids and I see adults, of course, where they say, oh no, I don't want to tell my parents that. I don't want to worry them, or they already have other stuff going on. And of course, they're trying to be loving kids. At the same time, what happens is then the kids are keeping it inside. And we don't want that. So, what we want to do is we want to show them we can tolerate the emotions. Doesn't mean we have to be happy about it. Of course not. You'd be like, oh, you got in a car accident. No, of course not. You can still have your emotion, but you know what you can say? We got this. We can handle it. I'm so glad you're safe. Okay, we can handle it. We'll just have to write down what are the steps we need to do. That's going to be a lot better for the kid because they're going to learn, oh, my parents, they can handle this. So then I can handle it too. All right, that's the message we want to be sending them. So I want you guys to think about like, what's my self-talk? Like, how do I talk about my own self? A parent's words become their child's self-talk. So the way that you talk about your own self, you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so stupid. I forgot that, or oh, I always forget everything. Like, I want you guys to really be mindful of how you're talking to your own self because this becomes your child's self-talk. Okay. Especially when it's paired with an emotional situation, with emotions in a situation, a parent's words become their child's self-talk. So, like, I'll give an example. I remember I used to work as a family therapist at a treatment center for eating disorders. And, I would have moms come in and they would be like, I don't know why she thinks like why she's struggling, like she thinks she's ugly or fat or whatever, like, doesn't feel good about herself. I always say, you're so beautiful, you're so all of this. And then I turn it around, I say, well, how do you talk about yourself? you know how do you talk about your own body? And then they'll say, oh yeah, well, I do say like, oh my gosh, I'm so fat, or oh, I ate like a cow, or whatever they say. And so our kids are watching. So how are you guys talking about yourselves? Because they're definitely watching. This is going to, like I said in the beginning, when they're in these stages of forming their identity, this really has an impact of how they start viewing themselves. All right. Okay. So an analogy of that is like when I'm frustrated, do I expect someone to turn the light off or to dim the light? So what I mean this in regards to our emotional experience with emotional regulation. When I'm frustrated, do I expect someone to turn the light off, meaning turning off all the emotions? Or could it be where they're just dimming the light? That's what we want. We want to go like if the emotions are a high 10, if the light is so bright, right? We're having a lot of emotions, maybe anger, frustration, sadness, whatever, all of that. The goal is for us as parents is to help our children dim the light. So going from a 10 to like a 6 or a 5. All right. So that's like, so if you think about like with emotions, let's say it's so high, can we help them dim it a little bit? So that's the analogy I want you guys to take in regards to emotional regulation and the intensity. Like, how can we help them dim the light a little bit so that it's more manageable? And just know that none of us are perfect. I just want you guys to be thinking about, what do I do most often? Am I someone who keeps the light on at 10, like, or the brightest, where the emotions, like with my own emotions, okay? And then also with your kids' emotions, like how do I deal with my own emotional regulation in front of my kids? And like I said, yeah, none of us are going to be perfect. I'm not sitting here saying that I'm perfect at all. No, I'm not. Just to know that, like I want you to just start to be aware of these things that we're doing around them, and just try to do it a little bit differently if you can, you know, um, because it goes a long way in investing in our kids in this way. So I'll give an example. So like, let's say if your kid is crying over a puzzle, like, oh my gosh, I just can't find this piece. It's a lot, like I just can't, like they're just frustrated, or, or whatever it is that they get frustrated about, a video game or something, I want you guys to think, what can I do to help them dim the light? All right. So meaning to lessen the intensity of emotion. So when your kid is frustrated, you want to send them the message that I have a feeling that I can think this through. It's not unmanageable. Like, we got this. We got this. Like, you want your kids to feel, to get that message. So for long-term resilience, you want to first validate the feeling. So like if they're crying over the puzzle, like, or like they can't get the last piece, you want to validate it first, which is saying like, oh, this is so hard. It's hard. So then it goes back. I know we talked a little bit about connect before you correct. So like you want to validate the feeling. I see this with couples too. They just struggle because they miss out on the validation piece. It doesn't mean, like I said, you don't want to just overlook and say, oh, well, we'll find it. Or, I know, like, you got this, whatever. Like, no, you want to say first, validate the feeling, give that space to have that negative feeling. This is so hard. Okay. Because our first instinct as parents is to make our kids feel better. Like I said, like to make them happy, like, oh, don't be sad, don't worry, or all of that. But no, we say this to make ourselves feel better. It's not, or we say it's not the biggest deal, or yeah, you're so good at math, or you're so good at soccer. Like, no, that's not what we want to be doing. So just like start to be mindful of that, because I know it's just so common for us as parents to just jump in and try to just make them feel better. But just what if you said, that's so hard. And think of it from their perspective. I mean, I have little kids, and so they get upset about some things that are really not the biggest deal, but I can't say to them, "Oh my gosh, it's not a big deal. Yeah, she took your toy," or like, "Oh, she said this, don't care about what she says." Like that, if someone like is saying something negative at school, what do you think that's going to do to them? It's going to tell them their feelings don't matter, and that they shouldn't even have those feelings. So that's not what we want to do. Instead, to say from their perspective, oh, it's so hard. I know you really wanted to play with that toy. And then, she took it from you. Like, just to validate that feeling. That's when they're going to dim the light. The intensity of emotion is going to dim when you first validate the feeling. Okay. All right. So the essence of resilience is we want to teach our kid that it's okay to be them no matter what bench they are on. It's okay to be them even if they do not make the team. They don't have to be this stellar, player or star or whatever. Like, it is okay to be them as they are. That's the feeling, once again, that we want them to feel, that feeling of security. So that's the essence of resilience. So that when you feel that way, like, oh, it's okay for me to be who I am, like I don't have to be excel in this or that, or, then they're going to be able to regulate their emotions more. Like if they don't get an A on something, oh, it's not like, oh my gosh, I'm worthless. I mean, sometimes kids, they do feel this way. I know for us in our culture, like our parents, they kind of you know, raise us in, in certain cultures where, your worth is so dependent on these external things. What do you think that does to a child's sense of self? You know, you guys, you really, need to think about that. What does it do to their sense of self? So, all right. So these are some things that just some lines that you guys can say to your kids in order to make them start to feel like they are resilient and that you can handle this. And so then in turn, they can handle it. So, and I want you to think, have I ever said this to my kids before? Like, let's say if your kids come and they tell you about something, maybe they did something bad at school or something, to their sibling or whatever, they lied about something. Like, have you ever said to them, I am so glad you are talking to me about this? Think about it. The fact that they're coming and they're sharing their feelings with you, they're sharing something that they probably, they don't feel proud of. See the positive in it, that they're coming and talking to you about it. They're not bottling it in. They're not just talking to their friends or they're coming and talking. So when we say this, even if you say it, and this is something I also suggest to couples I work with, say this to your partner. Like even if they're bringing up an issue, like let's say in couples therapy, like they're bringing it up because they're expressing their feelings. Isn't that what we want? Or is it where we don't want them to express their feelings if it's negative? Because you know what? We don't have time for it or we don't have space for it. We can't tolerate it ourselves. That's the message once again. So if you can learn, so there are certain lines I want you guys to take in and practice. And I'm going to send you all this stuff so you'll have it. I am so glad that you're talking to me about this. So yeah, even when we say this to our partner, we send the message, I still want to be in a relationship with you, even when you're feeling like this. Like I still care about you. It's not taking away anything from our relationship. Like I want you to have this space to express yourself. So to say that, okay? Saying I still love and accept you. And our kids, they really need to absorb this. They need to absorb that my parents can tolerate this part of me before I even learn to tolerate this part of me. Because maybe, yeah, your kids, they feel disappointed in themselves or they feel less than, they feel inadequate. But if their parents are sending them the message by saying, you know what, I'm so glad you're talking to me about this, that you're bringing this up here, then you're sending them that message that, oh, my parents can tolerate this intense emotion that I have. And before I can even. So then what do you think that's giving them a model, showing them it's possible to tolerate this, even though they're not there yet. That's okay. It's going to take some time and experience. They're going to be learning it from us. Okay. So that's going to be something really good. So I would say, even say it to your partner. I think that's so important. Even if you say it to your partner in front of your kids, oh my gosh, that would be really good. I'm so glad you are talking to me about this. Okay. All right. So the second line is, I believe you. Have you ever said this to your kids? Think about it. Okay. I think this is something that a lot of parents struggle with, especially like when the kids are teenagers. Just to say, I believe you. This is the most healing and confidence building line in childhood. All right. I believe that it feels this bad. Like if my, daughter who's 4 is like crying over something that's really not even a big deal, but I say, okay, just get over it, like suck it up, all of that. What does that do? It just ruins our whole relationship. Like, oh, my mom doesn't see me. She doesn't believe me. I have to step into her shoes as a 4-year-old. What must it be like, for maybe your sister to do this to you or whatever, or to take something or to lose something? Like this is, I'm telling you, the most confidence building line and healing line in childhood. I believe you that it feels this bad. All right. Even though we know we can zoom out and we know better, we want to make sure our kids get that validation. All right. So you don't want to be saying, that like, oh, well, it's not a big deal or just suck it up. You don't want your kids to feel like you know more about their emotions than them. So I'll give you guys an example. This is a family. I see mostly the teenage daughter, but I was seeing her younger brother. This was a few years ago. And the mom was sharing how, like, the brother, he was going to do this turkey trot, but, like this race, Thanksgiving race on Thanksgiving. And he was nervous. He was like maybe like 10 or something, 9 or 10. And he was so nervous because he was running late and he didn't want to go, you know, meet people in the middle. Like he just was feeling very embarrassed. And the mom was saying, oh, it's not a big deal. Like, it's fine. Like, nobody's going to care. Nobody's even sees. They're just carried about where they are in the race. And which it's true, right? Like she zoomed out and she knew better. At the same time, there was no validation of his feelings. So the mom was bringing the kids to see me to help build their confidence, to help them express their feelings in healthy ways. Like that's why she was bringing. But look at what she was doing at home. How do you guys think the kid, when he gets older and is in a job where maybe he has an issue with his boss, or he has an issue with the coworker, or even like a teacher, let's say in college, he has an issue. Do you think he's going to feel safe to express his feelings when the mom is saying, like, oh, I know more about your feelings than you do? No. That's not. So I want you guys to think about it. Do I send that message to my kids that I know more about their feelings than they do? Instead, she could have said, oh, I know you feel really embarrassed, because yeah, all the other kids are there and you're running late. That makes sense. What is that going to do? That's going to make him feel connected. It's going to make him feel seen and heard from her. And then, okay, she could say, well, what's the plan? What can we do? Like, do you think you could still muster up the courage to go? I think you can. What do you think? So there's ways to handle that differently. All right. So yeah, so sometimes we think we want our kids to be confident and to be speaking up, but then how are we talking to them about their own feelings? All right. So we want them to trust their feelings because they'll be in situations in the future where they're going to have to trust their feelings to make decisions. All right. So, but if we're telling them, oh, their feelings are wrong, or we know more about their feelings than they do, we're not going to help them feel that connection to their feelings internally. And then that's going to affect their decisions and their sense of self. Okay. And I know there's we could talk a lot more about these things. I'm just trying to give you guys some information right now. And if you want to go more in depth, like I said, I'll give you the book as well, the information. So another line that's really important is tell me more. All right, tell me more. Kids will get off the benches of emotions faster if you go through these three phrases, okay? So the first one, I'm so glad you're talking to me about this. So creating that safety, showing them you're not in trouble for sharing your feelings, okay, or for sharing whatever you did. Doesn't mean there's not consequences, but like, it's good. I'm glad you're talking to me about this. I believe you, and then tell me more. When you're saying tell me more, it's sharing it's giving them the message that, like, I really want to hear. I really want to hear what your experience is, because feelings, they don't give us problems as much as feeling alone in our feelings. Because when we feel alone in our feelings, like there's nobody to talk to, no one to validate, then what happens? It makes us feel stuck because there's no attachment there. It's just their feeling. And I mean, I'm sure some of you know, like, self-harm is a really, unfortunately, a common struggle right now, addiction that people are struggling, like our young people are struggling with. And a lot of it is feeling alone with their feelings. So what we want is it's not the feelings necessarily that give us the problems. It's just feeling alone, meaning not getting the validation, not having the space to talk, and not having the tolerance to even sit with it. So that's what we don't want our kids to be feeling alone with their feelings, okay? But in order for them to have the safety at home, we have to be able to sit with our own. It really starts with you. Um, so sometimes what I've seen too is parents, they have a fear that if they connect to a child's feeling, then it's going to keep them there longer. So like if my daughter is crying about, oh my gosh, she took my toy, like, and then if I say like, oh yeah, I know you're so sad, like she took your toy, you're so upset about it. They think like, oh, well, she's gonna keep on crying and crying over the toy. It's like they think that it's gonna keep them there in that negative space longer. But really, that's not what happens. It's just feeling alone in the feeling keeps them there stuck there longer. So instead, if I say, just suck it up, whatever, it's not a big deal. You have so many toys over there, what do you think is going to happen to the feeling? Do you think she's going to be like, oh, okay, let me stop crying? No, instead, she's going to be stuck in the crying more. So I want you guys to think about it. I know, like, I mean, I have younger kids, but even those of you with older kids, it's like it's the same kind of emotional experience. Maybe the tantrums look different, but and the issues are different, but it's where it's the same feeling. So we don't want them to feel alone in their feeling. Just validate. It helps them feel connected, seen, and heard. And so then they actually come out of the feeling sooner when you acknowledge that they're having the feeling. Like, oh, yeah, that totally makes sense. Um, so when we don't get and so this is the thing, when we don't get our emotions taken seriously by someone, you end up escalating the expression, even as an adult, because you are that much more desperate to be taken seriously. Okay, so like if you as a parent are saying, oh my gosh, I can't, you're so dramatic, what do you think is going to happen? So I specialize in eating disorders too. And with eating disorders, sometimes what happens is when children don't get their emotional needs met, or like their emotions are not being validated or seen or heard, what happens is kids end up being sick because you know what? That's a way for them to get their needs met. So when they feel alone in their feelings, when the feelings are not taken seriously by someone, they end up escalating their expression of the feelings. It comes out in other ways because they're so desperate to be taken seriously. And just like children, it's also adults who do that as well. Like, oh, I'm going to, like they can be more dramatic. That's what ends up happening. So really like think about that. Like it ends up coming out, like I said, just in other ways. Okay. So I want you guys to even do this. Okay. Like if you just sit on the bed with them, like if they're just hanging out, whatever, like if you have, like younger or older kids, just sit on the bed and say, hey, I just want to listen. Like if they have some issue or something going on, I just want to listen, not to judge or not to give advice. I just want to listen and understand. How would you feel if your parents came and did that to you when you were younger? How would you feel even now if your partner came and did that to you? Where they just come, sit on the bed and say, hey, I just want to listen, not to judge or to give advice. So sometimes we have to learn how to control ourselves when it wants to come out, right? Um, I just want to listen and understand. What do you think the feeling is that the child gets there? And the way to answer that is to think, how would I feel if someone did that to me? Okay. All right. So we as human beings, we are desperate to be believed and seen. And that's what doing these things, saying these lines, sitting on the bed and saying, I just want to listen and understand. That's what we're giving them, is that they're being believed and they're being seen. And that's where the connection and the bond comes in, and the emotional safety. Okay. So, when parents sometimes they see their kids stuck in feelings, they get in the feelings with them. And that's how they get released. So that's what, so when you see your kids struggling with feelings, Like I want you guys to get in the feelings with them, which means like validating, looking at things from their shoes, not judging, not like telling them bigger picture yet, like just first just being it in it with them. That's how they're going to feel because it's going to feel the connection and then they're going to get a release. Just like if I say to my daughter who's crying over a toy, oh yeah, I know it's so hard. You really love that toy. I'm going to be getting in those feelings with her and then she's going to release a little bit. Like, do you need a hug? Or, like she's going to release a little bit. All right. So, and like I said, there's always room for repair. So something that you can do, if you haven't done these things before, is like you can tell them, like, tell me more. I don't think I understood before. Let's say you had an issue with your child recently and it didn't really go the way that you wanted it to go. You can say, tell me more. I don't think I understood before, and really try to come in with an open mind and an open heart in hearing what they have to say. Okay. Um, all right. And so we also, what we want to do is we want to help our children make boundaries around their feelings. All right. So for example, like scheduling worry time. Okay. So you want to, I mean, see a lot of kids who have anxiety, even adults too, right? And so it's like anxiety is just constant. It's like always thinking, oh, I'm worrying about this. I mean, even us as adults. Okay. This is also a tip for you guys as adults is like, if you're worrying about something, just remember worrying, it's not going to do anything for you. It's not going to change the situation. Like if you're worrying about, like your kids, like, or whatever, like it's not going to change anything. So instead, can you help them make boundaries, like schedule worry time? You know what? Okay, I know there's a part of me that's worried about this. Worrying doesn't do anything for me except it keeps my mind busy. It keeps me up in my mind and stressed. So I'm going to worry from 4 to 4:30. Okay, that's my worry time schedule. All right. And so even when anxious, like let's say if anxious Lubna comes up or something, and it's 3 o'clock, oh, all right, I recognize, oh, it's not my worry time yet. So let me do something else. And then I'm going to worry from 4 to 4:30, I can worry as much as I want. I can write down my worries. I can just like be thinking in my head, ruminating on them. That's fine. I'm making boundaries that it's okay that I'm worrying. I'm not judging myself for worrying. I am allowing myself to have that space. At the same time, I have boundaries around them. So you can schedule some worry time. So I do that, I mean, with young kids too, like you can do it with young kids, you can do it with older people as well. All right. Uh, so yeah, so the goal is to be a sturdy parent, meaning be connected to someone else and yourself at the same time. Okay. So you're going to be connected to your child when they're having an emotion. And then at the same time, you're still connected to yourself. You're not just like, losing control over your emotional regulation. So that's why you want to be a sturdy parent. And the irony is that we actually feel before we think. All right. So think about that. We feel before we think. Feelings are what give us the basic information about survival, danger, and what we need. So it's all useful information to live a life that's aligned with your values is being connected to your feelings. Not that feelings should dictate like your decisions or, all the time or anything. No, but we have to be connected to our feelings in order to be making healthy decisions, because it's giving us information about our own self. So we don't have to be so scared of them, even though I know that they're not fun. It's just, can you see them as, oh, it's good information to know this? Even, but we have to, like I said, not label feelings as, oh, it's so bad. That's not an acceptable feeling. Um, and many of us are raised with praising good behavior to get more of the good, and then punished bad behavior to get less of the bad. Of course, like, okay, if you do something well, then okay, you're getting praise for that. If you do something bad, then you're getting, disciplined or punished for that. Like, just know, like, what we really want, I really want to drill this in, is that kids are good inside. And there's a difference between good inside identity and bad behavior. So whenever you are like giving consequences, are you labeling the child like, oh, you're being a bad kid or you're so bad? No. Like, let's learn, let's stop doing that. Instead, separate their good identity, who they are inherently, separate that from the bad behavior, that they're just struggling for whatever reason. They're struggling with how to do things, that are in alignment with their values, what they care about, So it brings up the question, and this is something even for us as adults to think about. I know I'm talking about children and parents and children, but this is also stuff that we think about for our own selves. So it brings up the question, why do good people do bad things? I mean, I wish I could ask you guys and you could answer, raise your hand and answer, but I want you to think about that. Like, why do people do bad things? We're so, and for most of us, we are so quick to make our least generous interpretation, which leads to punishment. Oh, they're just such a bad kid. Okay, so I'm just going to punish them for things. That is the least generous interpretation. There's not even a pause there to think about, oh, I wonder what was going on for them. I wonder what they're struggling with. And then it's coming out in their behavior. Do you even think about that? Even with our partners. So we're so quick to make the least generous interpretation. Like, oh, he was just being lazy, or, he doesn't care about me or whatever. No. Instead, I want you to know, what is my most generous interpretation of their bad behavior? Like, what is my most generous interpretation of their bad behavior? So this is one. I have a good kid who doesn't have the skills. They're struggling. My kid is having a hard time, not giving me a hard time. It's not about me. It's not personal. So this is the most generous interpretation. When a kid misbehaves, I have a good kid who doesn't have the skills. They're struggling. My kid is having a hard time, not giving me a hard time. Okay. So what skill do they need to practice in order to learn to do better? When you put a kid down, like, oh, you're so lazy, or you're so useless, or, and I know that, people, I mean, we're raised like that, and sometimes it ends up coming out and how we are with our kids, even when we don't necessarily want to talk like that. Like, sometimes when we're raised like that, it ends up coming out. Um, so what skill do they need to practice in order to learn? When you put a kid down, it's not empowering them to do better or teaching them a skill. Okay. It's not. Okay, so like, let's say if a kid is playing, football or something, example, like if you drop the ball, some people will be like, you dropped the ball, like you don't know what you're doing, like you're not paying attention or whatever. You're putting them down. It's not empowering them to do better. Instead, what if you said, oh, you dropped the ball? What was going on for you? Maybe they froze. Maybe they were nervous, like, what was going on for you? They obviously know they shouldn't have dropped the ball. It's such a better response to say what was going on for you, because they already know that what they did was wrong. So address the skill or the lesson to be taught, as opposed to blaming, shaming, or punishing. And this is where a lot of parents, we struggle. So we want our kids to know that we're on the same team. I know you know this. I know you don't want to drop the ball. I know you're not supposed to, but there's something that's getting in your way. What's getting in your way? I don't know what it is, but I do know we're going to break it down together and figure it out. If we say this, send this message to our kid, they're going to feel like, oh, we're on the same team, instead of, you don't know how to play. Like, you're just, you're not paying attention. You're lazy. You're not practicing, all of that. Like, what does that do to their sense of self? So like, we want to make sure we're sending them the message. We're on the same team. We're trying to understand what is in the way. I know you're not supposed to drop the ball. What's going on? Maybe they get so nervous. Maybe, you know, um, maybe they just froze. Like, that's going to be better. Like, if a coach says this, like, I know we're going to break it down together and figure it out. Like, what's getting in the way? Do you think the coach is saying it's okay to drop the ball by saying that? No, that's not the message that you're sending. Instead, it's the kids that are feeling, you know, it's the kid that's going to feel like, okay, let me turn within and understand myself more so that I can do something better, so I can have better behavior. That's the only way that it's going to help. Okay. And once again, it helps them connect to their feelings, and their feelings are what drive their decision making. So you want them to be connected to their feelings because it helps them make decisions in their life. And just so you know I talked about validating the kids' feelings, but know that this is an incomplete parenting strategy. That's not the only thing you do. You know, what we want is we want the kids to feel, so we can validate the feeling, but then give them the sense that they have a leader, a sturdy leader, which means not making it emotional, not making it about ourselves. Okay. We want to make sure the kid feels like there is a leader at home and that we can handle this. And if we can handle this, then in turn, they can handle it too. Okay. When parents allow kids to dictate how the family is run, and I've seen this with parents, unfortunately, where like if the kids are tantruming, if the kids want to do this or that, like the kids are the ones who are in charge. That is they're in charge. Like that is terrifying for kids. It's like give the example of a pilot, a pilot and passengers with turbulence. The pilot is in charge, right? But then let's say if turbulence happens, oh my gosh. Oh, if the pilot says to the passengers, "Oh, what do you guys think we should do? What do you think we should do?" Like that's not a sturdy leader. What do you think it's going to do to the passengers? It's going to freak them out. It's going to terrify them. So what we want is we want the kids to feel like they have a sturdy leader. And that means we're regulating our own emotions and we are making boundaries. We're showing them, making them feel like we can tolerate it. And in turn, they can tolerate it too. Because yeah, you definitely don't want to be on a flight with with a pilot who's saying, "What do you guys think we should do?" No way. Think of that. Like that's such a good analogy of parenting. Okay. The kids, they want us to actually be in control and give that feeling that we got this. Okay. And we're a team. All right. So it's not just validating the feeling, it's also showing them like, we can handle this. We can figure this out. Let's break it down. Okay. So the goal is to validate others' feelings and staying connected to your own role as a leader, as a sturdy leader. So you can still validate the feelings. So like, let's say if my daughter, I'm just using this example, where she's like crying, tantruming over this toy, whatever her sister took. And then, yes, I'm validating like, oh, I know it's so hard. Like you really wanted to play with that toy, like if I'm saying that, or if I'm saying, oh, it's not a big deal. You have so many toys, or just go to your room. Okay. Like, I don't want to hear it. I'm sure I've said that before. I'm not saying I'm sitting here perfect. Like sometimes it's so hard. It's a lot of emotions, but just thinking like, what does that do to them? It's showing you're not a leader. You can't handle their emotions. So how are they going to learn to handle their emotions? Like instead, if I say, oh, I know it's so hard. You really wanted that toy. Like what do you think? What do you think we can do about it? Like first, like give the space to just like have the feeling, give a hug or whatever, what do you think? What do you think we could do about it? And then you can give some options. Like, let's break it down. Let's figure this out together, you know? And I mean, when the kids are younger, yeah, doing that, you do it in a more simple way, but like as they get older, teenagers, like there's definitely things you can help guide them in their way of thinking about problems and issues, where they feel like they can feel empowered that they got this. So what you want is you want a leader who sees your feelings are real and is not affected by them. So like if my daughter's throwing her tantrum and I'm like, so like, I can't handle this, like, I'm just going, whatever, you girls figure it out, whatever, that's not sending the message that their leader is not affected. Instead, you want to validate their feelings and not be affected by them. It's not easy. This is where we have to learn. I mean, for me, I take deep breaths, or I'm just aware, okay, like I'm getting to a point where, okay, I think I need a little bit of a break or something, like we have to be aware of what's going on inside of us too. Um, and the only way to make this boundary is to know that I am not my kid. Those are their feelings. Sometimes when kids like they do have negative feelings and they bring it to us, we get so like too emotionally, involved in them to where like we get overwhelmed by their own feelings because like we make them our feelings. But no, you don't want to do this. You want to definitely make that boundary that I am not my kid. Those are their feelings. And can you see it as this is a learning opportunity for them? Of course, we don't want our kids to have negative feelings. At the same time, we know it's just inevitable, it's a part of life. And so then, can we help them feel that this is an opportunity for them to learn how to manage the negative feelings? What can you do about them? What can we figure out how to handle them? All right. So then this leads to empathy, and empathy for your kid requires boundaries because you're separate from them. You're not taking on their feelings, okay? And you respond as if it's not happening to you because it's not. Let's say, if they're upset about something someone said or did, and then you just make it like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's terrible, like, or all these things, like as if it happened to you, that's not going to be good. That's not going to be a sturdy leader at all. Okay. So like let's say I'll give an example for watch time. Okay. Like I know kids sometimes, we have them have watch time, free time. So if you're saying, like if your kid is tantruming, like I want to still watch, even though it's going to be bedtime, right? Like I want to watch, and they're throwing a tantrum. Instead, you could say, like, oh, well, sweetie, I know you really want to watch more, but my job is to keep you safe. And that means going to bed on time. You can tell me like without having a big emotional reaction and I know this is not easy. That's why we have to be taking care of ourselves too, in order to be staying centered and staying that sturdy, being that sturdy leader. And then you can say, like, you can tell me what show you want to watch. I'll write it down, and you can watch it tomorrow. And I get it. It's not what you want to do. It's just my job is to keep you safe. What do you think that's going to do? Of course, like, it's not like the emotions are going to automatically turn off or anything, but it dims the light a little bit. Like, I know you really want to watch more. I know you do. I would want to watch it too. It's such a good show. It's just that it's my job to keep you safe. And it is bedtime right now. Okay, so you tell me what you want to watch tomorrow and I'll write it down. And you could even write it down in front of them. What do you think that's going to do? It's definitely going to be dimming that light of the intensity. Okay. So what I want to drill to is like our kids' feelings, they don't dictate my boundaries. So just because they're having a tantrum for wanting more watch time, that doesn't mean that you know, you're excusing the boundary and just saying, okay, fine, just watch more. No, your boundaries don't dictate your kids' feelings, and their feelings don't dictate your boundaries. You're the ones, they just coexist, the boundaries and the kids' feelings. Okay. And that's what we want. That's where a sturdy leader is staying centered. They're not as affected by the emotions. Okay. Um, so a lot of us, what we also do, and I want you guys to think about if you do this, is we look to our kids for approval, but this leads to worse behavior because then they feel unsafe. Like, oh, we just want them to like us, or we just want them to, you know, favor us or something. Like I know sometimes people ask like, oh, who do you love, mama or dada? Or, like we just want that. I think a lot of these, I mean, I know that my family definitely, says those things. And so, but we look to our kids for approval, but we do not want to do this because it just leads to worse behavior. Or we want to be in good favor with them. Like, oh, okay, yeah, you can get the candy, or, you want them to like you, but no, that's not going to help them. It's going to make them feel unsafe. So don't let their feelings affect your boundaries. And once again, don't let your boundaries dictate their feelings either. Okay. They just coexist with each other. All right. So what about punishment? Let's talk a little bit about that. So we only pull out interventions from the mindset of the bucket that we're in. So what this means is that when parents are speaking from a voice that's not in control, their anger is control, and you're giving a punishment, that's definitely going to send a different message. You guys know when you're angry and you're giving a punishment, where the anger is the one in control, as opposed to the sturdy leader is the one in control, giving a consequence. Okay. So I want you to think about that. So it's there, like, of course, there still needs to be consequences. It's just who's the one who's in control there? Is it your anger, or is it you being centered, emotionally regulated, and giving a boundary there or a consequence? Okay. So and as parents, we have to know you have to feel good inside before you can act good on the outside. This is what we want for our kids. Like, they have to feel good inside if before they can even act good on the outside. Okay. So like, let's say if something happened at school, they got in trouble, and you say to them, oh, I heard what happened at school. Like, let's say if the principal called or the teacher called, oh, I heard what happened at school today. Let me first start with, you are a good kid. Okay. Tell me, what is it that happened? So you're already you're already building that safety. You've already created it by saying that, oh, I heard what happened. Instead of just yelling like, oh, I heard what happened. Like, oh my gosh, how did you do that? Why are you always doing this? What is that sending them again? Instead, let me start with, I heard what happened at school. Let me start with, you are a good kid. Tell me what's going on. I want to understand. Okay. If we don't do this to our kids, how are they going to do this? How are they going to feel good inside? And then, like I said, in turn, act good on the outside. So in order to change, you have to really hold on to that good identity. So that's why it's just making that separation, good inside, inherently good inside, just not having the skills, and then separating them from from the bad behavior. Okay. So yeah, so in order to change, you really have to hold on to that good identity. Otherwise, the bad behavior becomes the bad person, and then the shame cycle just ensues. And then shame leads to so many different things, addictions, um, lack of self-worth, not feeling good enough, all the stuff that I'm seeing, with so many adults. So you really want to hold on to that good identity, making sure that they feel that from you. Okay, otherwise the bad behavior just becomes you're a bad person. And then the shame cycle, unfortunately just is that their go-to feeling, familiar feeling. All right. Uh, so you have to notice the ways that you use your behavior to identify with who you are. Good identity doesn't justify bad behavior. Like I'm saying, like, doesn't mean, even if you're good inside, doesn't mean that it justifies or excuses the bad behavior. No, it just helps us understand the behavior. Okay. Because when you know that the kid is good inside inherently, you actually take the time to understand what's going on. And if you don't take the time to understand what's going on, the behavior is not going to change. Or the behavior can change because it could be out of fear of you. At the same time, it's going to create that tear in the relationship though. Okay. So if you don't understand the behavior, you can't change it. Okay. So, a lot of times parents will think, oh, like, I don't know what's going on, but I know that there's a reason for the bad behavior. I don't even have to tell you it's not how we treat others, because I know that, like, let's say if, your child does something to another kid, like, I don't know what's going on, but I know there's a reason for the behavior. And so I don't have to tell you, because yeah, you already know that, the child knows how we're supposed to treat others. So let's work together to actually figure this out, because I know you're capable of being in a situation where you are proud of your actions. Like, have the kid think, like, how do you feel about the actions? Don't be so quick to tell them as parents, like, oh, this is how I feel. I disapprove. I'm disappointed. How do you feel about your actions? I mean, I ask this to my kids, like, 6 and 7, like, how do you feel about it? you know, like, where they're actually being introspective and thinking about it, we're not just telling them how they need to feel about it. Okay. And I'm going to send you guys like a lot of these lines, like things that you can use in certain situations. So you'll have these tools to turn to. Okay, so yeah, so let's work together to actually figure this out because I know you're capable of being in a situation where you are proud of your actions. And then simulate it. Like you can give your kids a mantra like that they can say if they're struggling, like they could say, I can handle it. I can handle it. I got this. I got this. Breathe in, I got this, like when that could be their go-to when they're in a certain situation. And you could even model that yourself, you know, like model it for yourself. Like if you're showing that you're frustrated or something that's going on, not with them, but your own stuff, and then just say, okay, I can handle it. Say it out loud, like, even exaggerate it so that they're seeing you do it and then they end up doing it. I mean, I've seen that. I do that with my own kids and they end up doing it too, learning how to cope with feelings. If we can teach that to our kids, we're going to save them from so many things in the future. Okay. So when we do this, we prepare our kids for the challenges that life gives us because we know life has challenges. It has so much beauty and it has so many challenges too, and it allows them to not suffer in the sadness, rather to help them feel empowered to get through it. So I want to say that again. When we teach our kids, like they can handle, when we teach them how to emotionally regulate, to be able to tolerate all this range of emotions, they don't have to be scared of them. They don't have to dismiss them. When we do this, we prepare our kids for the challenges that life is inevitably going to give them. And it allows them to not suffer in the sadness and just wallow in it, rather to help them feel empowered to get through it. Okay. Um, so what I've seen in my practice and just even in my personal life, is a lot of people, they lost the ability to handle difficult situations, which leads them to turning into victims rather than a victor in their own life. And I want you guys to think of, I'm sure you guys know people who have more of that victim mentality, that victim mindset, but what we want is we want our kids to turn into victors instead. And so during these moments of challenge, we don't rise to the occasion, with our kids, with our own stuff, we don't rise to the occasion. Instead, we fall to the level of our training. And like I said, this is a job, the most important job, the longest job for most of us that we'll ever have, the one that we care about most on our deathbed. How are we with our kids? Like there's not no real preparation for it. There's not a lot of training. So during these moments of challenge, we don't rise to the occasion. Instead, we fall to the level of our training. And that's why I just wanted you guys to have some of this information to think about it. I know it's a lot of information. I'm going to send it to you, and there's a lot more to work on, in your situations, with your own families. And to just know though, like, let's be mindful of these things that we're doing and help teaching our kids how to cope with feelings, because that is going to set them up for life. You can have so much, you can have, so many privileges and all this, but if they don't know how to cope with negative feelings, I see it firsthand in my practice, in my personal life, that they end up struggling more, and they feel more like victims rather than victors. So that's the information that I have. There's a lot of resources out there. We really want, my intention for this talk was to really give you guys hope and to empower you, and to know we have to look at ourselves first as parents so that we can invest in our kids and hopefully, teach them how to do feelings and in healthy ways so that they can have a healthy, happier life experience despite, what the challenges that life throws at them. Um, so, okay, so that's what I have for today. I know it was a lot. Like I said, I will send you guys all the information. And then Sister Nudrat, I'm not sure if you want to step in or if there's any questions or anything in the few minutes we have.
I don't see any questions, but thank you so much, Jazakallah khair, for that wonderful lecture and all the insight and on it. And mashallah, that was very good. I hope everybody took a lot of points from that. And as you kept repeating it again and again, I do agree that it is very hard. And
So
we're all going to make mistakes. And we're all going to have that moment when we're going to slip off of it. But it's to realize that this is important. That's how life is. We
Mhm.
all make mistakes and we're going to try to come back. It's not important how many times you fall, but it is more important each time how you get up and
Yeah,
what you do after. So
right.
it
For
definitely, and then it is a very good book to read. It is one of my, it's on my list for sure on the
yeah,
Audible. It
yeah,
is
yay.
there,
That's
downloaded, ready
we
to
love it.
go. So thank you for giving me that encouragement to kind of listen to it again, listen to it sooner than later.
Mhm.
Um, and there was one point when I was looking at Dr. Becky's videos, one of them, which she said something very important was, and I am one of those parents who is struggling honestly with that. So, no, none of us are exceptions, doesn't matter, what we've studied, what we're doing, what we are, but we all have our struggles. So, in that, um, she says that imagine it is never too late to heal with your child. Like
Mhm.
whenever you yell, you shout, you do whatever you were not supposed to do. And
Mhm.
after that, you have that moment where you go back to your child and you do something called as healing, as she put it. And she says, your words are very important to mention to them that I'm sorry I did,
Yeah.
that happened and it was not nice. So we want to see how we can make this better for you and just give them a hug or however you want to kind of make them feel better about it. But it's nothing that you're a bad child. It is just that you're a very good child, but that behavior was not okay.
Right,
And we
right.
look at
Right.
that.
Separate that.
Yeah, yeah, and she did mention that imagine it's never too late because if you had a parent who's not there right
Mhm.
now, but they left a letter for you, stating that this is thank you, you were a good child,
Mhm.
and I'm sorry if I did all this to you as a parent, but your parent is not even there in the world, and they wrote this letter for you, then you would still, how would you feel?
Mhm.
And that's like, even at that moment, it will heal you. It will give you that,
Yeah.
hope and aspiration for hope with your parent that your parent did something and it
Mhm.
will heal that relationship. So that was very hopeful that that is definitely there. We should all keep working towards it, and
Yeah, yeah.
definitely we look at it as a perspective of our religion also and say, we have to keep doing what we have to do. In the end, it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we keep making dua and we keep praying for our children and for ourselves first. As you said, this is more
Mhm.
of a reason to look at ourselves
Oh,
and
so
change
much.
ourselves
We
more than
definitely
anything.
have to, because like I said, a lot of the stuff that our kids trigger in us, that's our own stuff. That
Yeah,
it's easy to put, just like with our relationships too, like it's easy to point the finger at somebody else, like, well, you're not being a good kid or you're not being a good partner. What if my own stuff is coming up here? Like we have to take that. Otherwise, like there isn't that growth there. And I say it to empower us that, wait, like we can take the time to understand, just like I'm saying with the kids, we want to understand the behavior, what's going on in order to effectively change it.
absolutely, absolutely. And
Mm.
it is challenging, it is hard, but we keep
Oh,
moving on, praying that we will all
yeah.
do our best and put our best effort in it and keep
Yeah.
learning this as
The
we learn
hardest
everything
job,
else.
right? It's the hardest job. And it's also okay for us to say to our kids, like, you know what? Yeah, like if you apologize, like, oh, you know what? I'm sorry. That's not the way I should have handled it. I should have, been able to stay more calm. And I'm sorry. I'm trying to work on myself too. Like you can say that to your kids, and it shows your kids like you're a human too, and that you care enough about the relationship to work on yourself. You care about them. It's sending them that message. We can always share that. I'll tell you guys a quick story. I know it's time. When I was preparing for the talk today, I mean, I had prepared a while ago, but like when I was preparing for it, my daughter, she's like, my 7-year-old, she's like, oh, mama, like, what are you doing? And I said, oh, I'm, preparing for a talk I'm going to give about being a good parent. And she goes, oh, but you already are a good parent. And,
Oh,
it's just like very sweet and loving. And believe me, I'm not sitting here saying I'm perfect. I'm not. But what we want is we want to know with our kids too, like what's the feeling that they get from us too. Um, what's that overall feeling? You could even ask them, like, how do you feel around me? Like how do you like I wonder what would our kids say? Like, how do you feel around me? Because that's gonna really show that if there's that connection too and that bond there, that safety.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Mhm.
so they're always watching us and they're always critiquing us too, I'm sure. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I
Yeah.
think that would be a good question to ask them.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Of
I still
course.
don't see anything out there, so we can end, inshallah, and we will post this on the
Yeah, yeah.
YouTube and along with all the information that you're going to be
Yeah,
forwarding,
yeah. I will
inshallah.
send it to you as
And
soon
yes,
as possible. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right. Well,
Thank
yeah,
you so much
I think it's
again,
so
and we
important.
will,
Yeah, for us.
inshallah. Yeah.
Yeah, to just be doing that work and not being perfect, not beating ourselves up, but knowing that there's hope and that there are resources out there that we can do because we're going to care about this job more than any other job, most likely.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Salam, thank you all for making the effort too, and really trying to do right by our kids by also taking the time to listen and to reflect, hopefully, on our own selves. So,
Thank you. Thank you, everybody who's attended today and taken this step towards, their parenting journey. And
mhm.
inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for everyone. And we will end today, inshallah, with a dua.
Mhm.
سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك وأتوب إليك. We will see you on the next session on the third Saturday. Inshallah, that is going to be on eating disorders, and Sister Lubna and Sister Najiha are going to be doing that. We'll share more details on that, inshallah, coming
Mhm.
forward. And then we also have a pediatric headache lecture next Saturday. It's just an additional, we have somebody to share more information with us, and mashallah, we'd like to look at that. And
Mhm.
then we have a protest for Palestine this weekend. So inshallah, hope to see everybody there too. So inshallah, thank you so much. Jazakallah khair, Sister Lubna. Thank you once again for always willing to come forward and teach us. And inshallah, we will, see you
Okay.
around, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for this.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you guys and see you soon. See you next month. All right.
Bye.
Okay. Salam.